Believe the good news. The kingdom of God is at hand. The reign of God is a shadowy, elusive phrase, and yet it is the dominant theme of Jesus' life and teachings, the theme central to everything he said and did. The kingdom of God is at hand. You know, an architect always constructs a model for the client to evidence what the house or the skyscraper will look like. And a designer lays out very carefully paste-outs of furniture and drapery and lighting, size, shape, color, place. And so we believers would very much like to understand and to know what the reign of God looks like. Its configuration, description, its time, the when, what, how of it all. And perhaps we have to be satisfied with the reign of God as the way of life offered every person and every human community by the life and teachings of Jesus. So does the reign of God come. It comes in the intimacy of marriage, in friendships, in the world of business, of work, of politics, in the church. It's a leaven that's supposed to make a difference in the world that God created out of the love of his heart. The parables of Jesus never tell us exactly what this means. Parables tease us to think outside the box and to reflect on it and connect it then to the uniqueness of our lives. His life and teachings are a point of reference for decisions about how we are to live. And the parables imply that by our life response, we can unleash the mighty power of God and have a hand by the power of the Spirit in its coming. You know, as we face the human condition, we are tempted to look beyond time, not to see anything really good or possible in time. We see so much suffering and violence and hatred and indifference to the poverty of the many people. We see terrorism like the explosion of that plane the other day, and we are tempted to look beyond time and to seek the kingdom of God only at the end time. But the parables remind us of the planting by God of growing things. The wheat, the mustard seed, the leaven in the dough. So the kingdom of God, the life and teachings of Jesus planted in time and in God's world. The seed, when full grown, men and women who live kingdom values. Now the puzzling question is, the person of Jesus is so attractive, his teaching so magnificent, why do so many people not hear or see or follow in the way of the kingdom? And we are not to judge. Believers are to echo the forbearance and the patience of God. You know, God allows everything in process, everything human to come to maturity in his good time. Everything that is human is becoming, not completed. And we witness the willingness of God to wait in hope for good things to happen. And in this interim period, we disciples of Jesus always leave judgment to God. We have no right to judge anybody else. For the present, the proper response is patience and tolerance, born in the conviction that in the end, God will make all things right. In time, all is flawed. Every person, every institution. You know, you and I don't have to have any proof for that the institutions of the world, from the ACLU to the boards of business, to the halls of Congress, and to the church as well, all are a microcosm of the field in which there are both weeds and wheat. All persons, all institutions need to reflect on themselves with a willingness to be converted to what is true and to what brings peace and justice and unity to our world. And as the parables point away from judgment, they point to involvement. They highlight the contrast between small beginnings and great results. The little things that we can do that somehow will happen. This hope should lead us to become involved with a conscious, deliberate decision to live as sons and daughters of the kingdom. So do we evidence hope that it all has meaning. We are part of a mosaic meant to bring life where we are, believing that it will all come to fullness in God's good time. Will we be discouraged at times, disappointed in the institutions of the world? Certainly we will. And we will be wondering whether or not we are pursuing a fantasy. But because our hope is in the crucified and risen Lord, our faith is firm. And the Lord nudges us to patience and forbearance. It is always too soon to lose hope, to drop out, for example, of the church. The church is not the kingdom. It has all the limits of every institution. And at the very same time, it's to be a sign of the kingdom. And if we reflect on it and learn about it, we will understand that at its best, it serves human needs. At its best, it brings goodness to the human community. Think of Catholic relief services. More than 20% of all the help given to AIDS people in Africa is from the Catholic Relief Association. And where does the money come from? From you and me. And where do the people come from? From people like our families. Catholic Charities in Chicago, the biggest charitable institution in the United States. And it helps everybody, irrespective of religion or race. Everybody is helped by Catholic Charities. Amade House, young people graduating from college who offer 1 or 2 years of their life to serve the poor in the inner city of Chicago. Jesuit volunteers going all over the world working with their Jesuit converts in mission work. And the list goes on and on and on. And in our parish, the food pantry, the jewel of our parish, serving, 400 families a month with food necessary for them. People who teach the kids in religious education. People in the liturgical ministries. We ought to involve a lot of you to volunteer to serve as proclaimers of the word, as people who bring up the gifts. Oh yes, we have an endless array of ministries within our own parish. And all this involvement wasn't even hinted at when I became a priest 63 years ago. It just wasn't there. And see how, despite the loss of people, the numbers of people decreasing in the worship of the church, the number of those involved is magnified. And so the church is very much alive, and at its best, it is a good sign of the coming of the kingdom. We are understandably impatient to see the full growth of the seed, the mustard plant, the leaven in the dough. We see the brokenness in the world, and we might expect that God will act directly and immediately. No. The parables tell us of the patience of God and point a finger at you and me. Get involved in whatever way you can to bring the light of Jesus to our world.